Our scripture reading today is from Ruth chapter 4, verses 1 through 12. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, sit here. And they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relatives, Amalek. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. I will redeem it, he said. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. At this, the guardian redeemer said, then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, why buy it yourself? And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are a witness that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Amalek, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's wife, as his name will not disappear, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together build up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman. May your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks so much, Mark, for reading the gospel so clearly. Again, I want to appreciate Pastor Justin for standing by me and being my partner as we preach. Friends, a lot is happening in my life. I'm going through a lot of issues. As I stand before you today, I'm overcome with emotions. I'm in transition. And today happens to be my last day officially to preach here at Monticello United Methodist Church. For some who read last month's newsletter, I did pour out my heart in there, trying to show you how much I loved being here and how much you mean to me as fellow pilgrims in this journey of faith. So this is my day to say goodbye, and I don't like that word. I really don't like that word, but we have to say it sometime. I need to say goodbye to you, and may the Lord keep you in faith. That's not the sermon of the day. That's not the sermon of the day. But really, it makes part of my sermon. And for those who are following us online, I really know we are going to meet somehow. we will always be meeting as we preach the word of God. Now, I posed a question at the beginning of the sermon, and my old man, I know he does a good job in really communicating what's happening in what really I want to communicate. So the question was, do you think being a father is more difficult than being a mother? Do you think being a father is more difficult than being a mother? And I need an answer for that.
No.
I really don't know the answer, but I know we all have different reactions to such type of a question. Today, we are celebrating what is traditionally known as the Father's Day. I thank God because somehow, as young as I am, or as young as I feel, God has made me a father. Not a father of one, but a father of many. God has privileged me to be a father of 3 handsome sons. The oldest one of them is 30 now, followed by one who's 26, and the youngest one is here. I don't know where they decided to sit today. Where are they? I know they're somewhere, seated somewhere, I don't know, but I can't see them. But he's now taller than me. He's only 18. He's only turning 18 now. God has made me a father of 3 sons, and I also consider myself as being a father to my wife as well. Yeah, that's how I consider myself. God has also made me to be a father to many children in my family who are entrusted to me as their father. I have 4 brothers who have since passed on to the next life, and I remain behind as the father to those children, to their children. God has also made me a father to this beautiful family. When you look at me, you are looking at your spiritual father, the one who is entrusted by God to look to the welfare of you guys. What a responsibility that I have. Now, we don't all have the same kind of family experiences. In many families, mothers are the spiritual force in the families. In a recent research by an organization called Banner, it studied some practicing Christian homes. And it found out that mothers, more often than fathers, or any other category of frequent participants in the household, are seen as the confidants or providers of support and drivers of faith formation in their homes. The research also showed that many people esteem and rely on their moms as sources of strength, companionship, and wisdom into their adulthood. I still turn to my mother for advice. In turn, mothers still meet a range of needs and provide support for their own grown-up children, or when applicable, to their grandchildren as well. In another study made among Gen Zs, this one is more interesting now. It was found out that Gen Zs identified their mothers as principal housemates for all of their activities. Now, these are the results of the research. 85% of mothers ate meals with their children. You can fill in the gap for fathers there. 81% of mothers watched television movies with their children. Again, you can fill in for the fathers there. And 70% of mothers talked to their children about God. Again, you can fill in the statistics for the fathers there. And 63% of mothers are the primary activity partners for their children. They accompany children to the park, to some of their school activities. I won't delve into the statistics about fathers because I'm one of them and I don't want to be embarrassed and embarrass myself. Now, on this Father's Day, I also want to share about myself. I remember lessons I learned from my father, Fibion. May his soul rest in peace. My father, who passed away several years ago, showed me how to stand up for my convictions, but never to let them go into the way of loving others. He also taught me to make the most of my life and to make the most of my faith in God. Though he did not go very far in his education, my father offered counsel and teachings on real-life issues in a way a university professor would be green with envy. I also have my uncle, Nathan. My uncle Nathan, who is also with the Lord now, was an example of a man who adhered to the calling of God in his life and had an impact upon thousands of people who came across him. But he never forgot to love and care for his family. These men lived their faith and showed me how to love my family, work hard, and have higher dreams for my children. We don't all have the same experiences of family, but wherever you can find love from a father or father figure, let's honor them, especially on a day like this. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you all. It's our Father's Day today. It's a day when we celebrate fathers. So as we celebrate them, we always should come up with some hard issues to make them better fathers. As we read in our call to worship, some fathers are never there when they are needed by their families. Some are never there, not by choice, but by God's design that they depart so early. I really wish and pray that my father was still physically with me today. I loved that old man. I loved tapping from his wisdom. By the time he passed on, he was like a buddy to me. I could pour out my heart to him and he could tell. I actually almost know everything that he wanted me to do after his departure, because when he was about to go, he would divulge a lot of what I needed to know, and I miss him greatly. Today, as we celebrate Father's Day, we are in a sermon series, Portraits of Faith. And I intentionally decided to draw a man out of a woman's story. And the story is about Ruth. But in that story, there is a man who stands out as a father figure. Now, this story begins with a famine. And if you were to read Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in those days when the judges ruled, that is, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and his 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. God forbid it. I was looking at myself and Felicia and Kudzi and probably another son who is going to join us. For some reasons, you all know, we are here in the United States. Things may not, whatever you may have read about my country, which is Zimbabwe, things are not very well there. And I pictured myself in the shoes of Elimelech and his wife and his 2 sons having to go to Moab. Not out of choice, but because there was a famine in Israel or in Bethlehem. So, this is the setting of the story. This was a time when you also hear phrases like, this is the days when the judges ruled. You need to go to the book of Judges and find out what was happening again. Because everything happens within a setting. So, this was a time when the people of Israel had abandoned God's ways and fallen into idolatry. They had fallen into horrific social conditions, and a disastrous civil war was also going on at that time. And if you want a fuller story of that, go and read the book of Judges. Now, and this is a book immediately preceding the book of Ruth, where we are drawing our lesson today. Responding to the famine, Elimelech and his wife Naomi and her 2 sons, Chilion and Mahlon, went to Moab, a move of desperation, given the long enmity between Israel and Moab, where they thought the prospects for productive work were greater. That is, they thought Moab is a greener pasture for now. We do not know whether they were successful in finding work there, but the sons both found wives in Moab. But within 10 years, they experienced both social and economic tragedy. That is, the death of all the men, Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon, leaving Naomi and her 2 daughters-in-law as widows. In Ruth chapter 1, verses 3 to 5, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And she was left with her 2 daughters. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband as well. The 3 widows had to support themselves without the legal and economic rights according to them in their society. In short, they had no husbands, no clear land title, and no resources with which to make a living, because they had lost the protection and support of their husbands. They were easy targets for economic and social abuse and exploitation. Under those circumstances, many women would resort to prostitution simply to survive, a situation all too common for vulnerable women in our day as well today. Probably not here in Monticello, but elsewhere, that's the order of the day. But certainly, this is a familiar story, especially to me. This is a very familiar story. Naomi had not only become a widow, but was also an alien in Moab. Yet, if she returned to Bethlehem with her daughters-in-law, the younger women would be widows also, as well as aliens in Israel. Perhaps in response to the vulnerability they faced, no matter where they might live, Naomi urged them to return to their maternal homes. Does this sound familiar? And she also prayed to God that the God of Israel would grant each of them security within the households of a Moabite husband. And to Naomi, this would be a solution. You can read Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. Yet, one of Naomi's daughters-in-law, Ruth, could not bear to be separated from Naomi, no matter the hardship they were to face. In Ruth chapter 4, which is the subject of our sermon today, where I'm drawing the title or the sermon title, The Responsibilities of a Father. In Ruth chapter 4, we have two men engaged in a conversation about taking the responsibilities of a family. Although in this story, one family needed a male role model, Naomi needed a son to take care of her in her old age. Ruth needed a man or a male to take care of her in her childbearing age. Without delving into details, Boaz stands out as that ideal kinsman, a role model. Boaz was not only interested in the estate of the late relative, but was also interested in the welfare of the children or of the families or of the ladies that had been left behind, of the surviving widows. More often than not, when a relative has died and you are the next of kin, so they regard you to be, many people consider themselves privileged to take over the property, but never see it as a priority to look to the welfare of the surviving widow. So, his decision to marry Ruth was out of love for her, as well as a commitment to carry out his responsibilities, the responsibilities that came along with the decision to inherit the property of the late relative. What can we learn from this story? What can we learn from this story? As I read this story, I came up with 3 things that I think good fathers should always consider in their lives. Number 1, the responsibilities of a man. Men should consider the responsibilities of being a spiritual father, a spiritual leader, a leader in their homes. Fathers are obligated to lead their families, and leadership comes with taking on responsibilities. Leadership is not an automatic right. You don't just become a leader because you are the father. And some people would actually go to the extent of, I'm the father of this house. The buck stops here. You earn leadership by the way you step out for your family. Your family is looking for you to be a spiritual leader. You should be the one who takes the wife and children to church. Hear this from me, my brothers and sisters who are here today. Sunday is not an off day for you dads. Children should not make the decisions to skip going to church. It's not their decision. The head of the family makes sure they come to church. And please remember me for declaring this unashamedly, and as an African as well. I did not have the choice to remain behind when others were going to church. And my father and my parents, my father figure, my uncle Nathan, made sure that when we say we go to church, the doors are locked. And we all go to church. And this is a challenge to us. Fathers should be the spiritual leaders of their families. Don't care about what then happens thereafter, whether they're going to drift away from that. But the Bible tells me that you should actually make sure that your child does the right thing, and when he grows older, he will not depart from that. You need to initiate that, fathers. And you also should be setting as an example in the family. One of the roles of a father is to keep the family intact. In today's American do what I want society, people are just free. This is the land of the free, isn't it? People just do whatever they want. There is another element which I also want you guys to remember me for. Like I'm saying, these are my parting shots, isn't it? You probably will never hold me accountable to this, because after this I'm gone. It's meant to be a joke, guys. One of the areas where I believe fathers should take a very serious consideration is marriage should not be relegated to a choice that has no consequences. Marriage is one test that God puts upon our shoulders to fight against our own selfishness. God lets you marry to see if you fight your own selfishness. Our problem is that we give up on marriage too easily. I know this might be a sermon for those who have remained back at home, but I know they'll catch up with me on social media. Marriage should not be left or neglected that easily, or relegated to the periphery that easily. Fathers, you need to make the decisions to make it work and keep your family intact. The final thing is, what legacy do you want to leave? What would you want your family to remember you for? Fathers, how do you publicly show your family that you love them? Do you remember to say, I love you to your children? Do you remember to say, I love you to your spouses? Whatever a father does, it builds a legacy. What then shall we say? Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4 sums it very well. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. My father would always say, it's never too late to make corrections. It's never too late to make corrections. We can still go back and restart the formula. Be the father of the family who brings happiness. We shouldn't be talking about a father who is a Christian, for that matter, who has no relationships with his or her own children. A good father will always bring up his or her children. A good parent will always bring up his or her children under the instruction of the Lord. Guys, I'm done. Happy Father's Day.